Hello everyone, this is Al-Fadi and I'd like to welcome you to a new video series that we will be launching, myself and my dear brother David Wood, who's with me here in studio. And this particular video series is going to be a little bit unique, and I believe no one in the past have tackled this issue that we will be dealing with in depth. The topic has to do with Islam and atheism. Now I know to some of you, this may sound a little bit strange in terms of the combination between a religion called Islam and atheism. But as we discuss the topic in this particular introductory video and then the preceding ones, you will begin to understand why we elected to deal with this particular topic. David, I'd like to welcome you, of course, here in studio. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Glad to be here, sir.
And, you and I remember we explored this idea before, and as everybody knows, probably by now from listening to your testimony, that when it comes to atheism, in my personal view, I think you are someone who is qualified to talk about that from your personal experience and also from certain debates that you engaged in the past, or even continue to interact with people who come from that background. Now, remember, David, when I mentioned to you about the connection between Islam and atheism, we were dealing with this new trend that is happening in the Middle East. In fact, some of the research that I try to look at takes you all the way back to 2011, 2013, give or take, all the way to this time. What we're discovering is that a lot of young, Arab people in the Middle East, I don't want to classify all of them are Muslims. It's quite possible just a minority of them, maybe they're not Muslim, maybe they're nominal Christians, but the majority are Muslims. Mm-hmm. They're, oddly enough, they're declaring themselves to be atheists. Some estimates will tell you there is about at least 6 million in Saudi. I tend not to believe maybe it's such a large number, but there is a large number of basically Arab Muslims in the Middle East. Some estimates takes it up to 30% of the young Muslims population. Now, it's kind of interesting. We want to show a slide right now that will depict what I'm trying to talk about here. If you look at this slide, the green represents 2013, the purple represents 2018, 2019. For the most part, you are seeing in all of these Islamic countries that there is an increase of people who are leaving Islam, basically, leaving religion altogether. With the exception to Yemen, and I think I have my theory about Yemen, but all that to say is that there is this tendency to move away from religion. And that's why, we would like to explore this, basically. David, is it a good thing for the Muslims, technically speaking, to leave Islam from an evangelistic standpoint or apologetic point of view?
Yeah, I hear a lot from lots of Christians who are concerned because, in my videos, I target Islam a lot and I expose Muslim arguments for Islam. I show that, no, the Quran is not this scientific miracle. The Quran hasn't been perfectly preserved. Muhammad is not the greatest man ever. He is not someone you would want to even live around. And so I go through the arguments that Muslims have been taught all their lives are the evidence for Islam. And then once they find out that these arguments are actually just completely bogus, some of them leave Islam and become Christians, and some of them leave Islam and become atheists. And what I hear a lot from Christians is, well, if they leave Islam and become atheists, then that's just horrible too, right? They're leaving one false ideology for another false ideology, and I think the Christians who don't see leaving Islam as a positive thing, unless people convert to Christianity, are kind of missing the big picture. Islam has a stranglehold on many societies in this world. They don't have, non-Muslims don't have the same rights as Muslims. People are oppressed. People are not free to share their religion. In Muslim countries, if enough people leave Islam, whatever they're converting to, if they're converting to Hinduism, if they're becoming atheists, if they're becoming Christians, whatever they're becoming, if enough people leave Islam, then there's actually a much better chance of that society reforming its laws so that they take into account human rights and religious freedom and freedom of speech, in which case Christians in that country would then be free to preach the gospel without fear of retribution and so on. And so as far as Islam dominating certain areas, I would say it's good that people are leaving Islam. Obviously, from the perspective, as far as the individual person is concerned, yes, that person still needs Jesus Christ, and
right.
if he becomes an atheist, then he's wrong. He's wrong about that. But from the perspective of, hey, we want people's rights protected and things like that, this has to happen. And so, yeah, as far as people leaving Islam, even if they're identifying as non-religious, I'd say it's a good trend that we kind of need to go through in order to get the Islamic world on board with, again, things just like basic human rights and so on, and basic freedoms.
Right. And I would agree. I mean, in my own journey, by the way, between 1999 and 2001, I felt, like at least I tried to convince myself that I want to leave religion altogether. Mm-hmm. But during those 2 years, I also felt guilt. And the guilt came from the fact that I can't deny really God exists. But at the same time, I'm confused really now about what I know about Islam versus what I'm discovering about Christ, for instance, in this case. In other words, the Christianity that is being presented to me is totally different than the Christianity that I studied all of my life. The brainwashing, if you wish, that you just mentioned. So I find it a little bit interesting that someone from an Islamic background, and you and I know how strong of a hold Islam has on the minds of people, that they will gravitate completely away from religion rather than to say, I'm leaving Islam to accept something else. From your experience, I mean, I can, share a few, and we talked about a number of reasons already, but what do you think are some of the primary reasons beside, the stronghold, for instance, and rebellious against it?
Yeah, I think there are two main reasons that we see a lot of the people who are leaving Islam becoming atheists or agnostics or just generally non-religious. And it comes down to sort of your reasons for leaving Islam. It can be pretty narrow. You could say I'm leaving Islam because I'm recognizing Muhammad as a false prophet, or it could just be I'm fed up with religion. And especially a lot of the people in the Middle East, they've been looking at stuff with like ISIS and Al Qaeda and so on, and they look at it and they're just going, this is what religion does.
That's right.
Religion is causing this, and so they have this just negative reaction towards religion, and they just want none of it. And so, but basically, if you think about what Muslims believe. Muslims believe in God. They believe in a God who has sent prophets into the world, many of the prophets that we're familiar with in the Bible. They believe lots of things that Christians believe about Jesus. So they believe that he's born of a virgin. They believe that he performed all kinds of miracles. They believe that he's the Messiah. So they share a lot of the same beliefs that Christians have. And so if a Muslim comes to view Muhammad as a false prophet, then if all they're saying is, hey, this guy that I've been told to believe in, I no longer believe in him, well, they have a lot of the beliefs that would be common to Christianity. So it's very, very common, as you know, for a Muslim to say, I reject Muhammad. Well, now what do I believe? Well, I still believe in God. I still believe in the prophets. I still believe in Jesus. But now my beliefs are no longer being filtered through the lens of Muhammad. Now I need to see what Jesus actually said.
Right.
In which case, well, it follows that a lot of these Muslims who are leaving Islam would then become Christians because Christianity still retains the belief in God, the belief in Jesus, and all these other things. But if they're leaving Islam because they just they feel like they've just been misled all their lives. It's very easy to say, gosh, I just don't trust people telling me about religion anymore. I don't trust all this God talk anymore. These guys that I believed in with my whole heart all my life, these religious preachers, they duped me my entire life, and I built my entire life around a bunch of lies. I'm not falling for this again, and so it's pretty common. Also, just say I'm done with religion. So that's kind of one reason. It's just you know, given their reaction to their former beliefs, they can reject one little part of it, Muhammad, in which case there's still a pretty theistic framework left behind, or they can just want to be done with it altogether. So there's that. Another reason that we find lots of ex-Muslims becoming atheists is that the people they've been listening to and the people they trust on the issues that they've been studying to that cause them to doubt Islam are themselves atheists. So they're online. So you can imagine a Muslim in, you know, Saudi Arabia or something like that who is Muslim, but then, you know, he's 17, 18 years old, and he starts, you know, watching videos online and stuff like that, watching critiques of Islam. Well, lots of times it's atheists, and they're not just criticizing belief in Muhammad, they're just criticizing religion in general.
Right.
And so if this becomes your reason for doubting Islam, and you come to respect the person that you're listening to, in other words, man, I really love this person's videos, and he's an atheist, and everything he's saying is right, and he's the smart one here, then they're inclined to follow the people that they respect and have been listening to, and that might be, you know, Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and the sort of proponents of the new atheism, a more aggressive form of atheism. So it might just be that they come to, you know, they're replacing their traditional religious authorities, their imams and so on, with these other guys that they like.
Yeah, there's
they
still
like
a tendency to have an authority, but
yeah,
it's a
and
different
so
one.
yeah, and so they start following these guys more. And so you know, atheists and Christians like us have in common that we're both trying to expose Islam as a false ideology, whereas you know, we're coming at it and we're saying, hey, you know, hey, we agree with you. We believe in God. We believe that God has sent prophets into the world. We agree with that. But this guy is obviously a false prophet if you take a closer look. And so, yeah, we're coming like that. But there are also lots of atheists out there, and this is why it concerns me when there are Christians who say you shouldn't criticize Islam, you shouldn't criticize Muhammad, you shouldn't criticize the Quran because that's just going to drive Muslims away. Instead, you should just preach the gospel. But notice what would happen if we actually took that seriously. And suppose you and I and Sam Shamoon and the others who do what we do, suppose we stopped criticizing Islam. Well, guess what? We're no longer the ones who are exposing Islam and exposing Muhammad when, you know, these 15, 16, 17-year-old guys start to consider the possibility that Muhammad might be a false prophet, and when they go looking it up. If Christians stop doing that, then atheists are the only ones calling these guys out of Islam, right? Atheists are the only ones exposing Muhammad and causing these guys to doubt. Well, guess what? Who are they? They're all going to follow atheism after. I mean, not all of them. Some might continue, might continue their journey and so on. Yeah. But gosh, we have to be among the people who are calling these guys out of Islam and exposing Muhammad, because then we're the ones they're listening to, and then they'll, you know, then they hear about the gospel as well.
Exactly, and I agree with you, because in the case of us witnessing to them, we are also calibrating and correcting their misunderstanding about Christ and Christianity. Remember, Islam, part of its package is that it teaches them false things about Christ, the cross, salvation, the Bible, and so on and so forth. So if we leave them alone, they may assume that all of this is true. And also, lack of action on our part, you know, contradicts the fact that we have to really go to the lost. The Lord says He came to seek and to save. Seek requires going, you know, seeking after the people, reasoning with them, and so on and so forth. I'm not saying all of them going to accept Christ, but we can also abandon them. I think, personally, as someone who's a former Muslim, it's a ripe ground for us when a Muslim say, I'm an atheist. That means they're at least showing signs of openness now, and gives us the time to reason with them.
Absolutely. I mean, there are people who just never want to change the beliefs that they're raised with, and so on. And so once people have been, you know, are able to break away from that tradition, that's even if they go to something that's wrong, the sort of teachability and the willingness to change, that's positive.
Amen. So, David, given that this is an introductory, video for this series, what else should our audience expect in this series?
Yeah, well, what we want to get to is basically for the Muslims who become sort of disenchanted with their religion, and then come to view all religion as false and fables and fairy tales and so on, and just leave religion altogether. We want to have a discussion about whether they're sort of moving too fast. Because just lots of guys, they reject Islam and then they become atheists. And you want to say, seriously? I mean, how much research did you do before concluding that all religions are false? So you don't want to, it doesn't make much sense to say, I've been duped by Islam, so I'm rejecting Islam. Now I'm going to jump into this other ideology. Well, should you be jumping into this other ideology without examining it first, right? I mean, that's the problem you had with Islam. You sort of accepted it without investigating it properly, and once you investigated it properly, you realized it was false. Do you then want to jump into another ideology like atheism without trying to understand whether it actually makes sense? So we want to go through and just look at, especially over the in the coming videos, sort of explore some issues like meaning and morality, and how the atheist perspective on these things is going to be very different from the Islamic perspective and the Christian perspective, and sort of what are the implications of the atheist view. Because just as a heads up, lots of Muslims leave Islam because they regard Muhammad's behavior as immoral. They're taught all their lives that Muhammad is this pattern of conduct for all people, that everything he did was wonderful. And then they find out that Muhammad did all these horrible things, and so they decide, I just can't believe in this guy anymore. They leave, but then they become atheists. And so one of the things we want to explore is, as an atheist, do you even have any sort of basis or foundation for saying that Muhammad's behavior is immoral beyond your feelings, right?
Exactly.
Anyone can say it. Anyone can say, no, Muhammad should not have done that. But we want to say, does it actually make sense as an atheist to say that this behavior is right and that behavior is wrong, or this is good and this is bad, in any way that means something beyond your feelings? And if you can't, if there is nothing in atheism that provides that framework, and yet ex-Muslims still want to condemn Muhammad, then it seems they need a different worldview, one that can actually account for their moral judgments against Muhammad. So we're going to look at that.
Absolutely. So hopefully everybody is going to be tracking with us. This series, like I said, I believe is going to be a groundbreaking in terms of addressing this issue head on, meaning tie-in connection between Islam and those who are leaving Islam and becoming atheists, and therefore addressing some aspects of atheism that we believe will be relevant to someone from a Muslim background. So this isn't purely about atheism and all the arguments out there concerning that, but we will cater it towards the mindset of those who leave a religion like Islam. So hopefully you will stay with us. Thank you again for being with me here, brother, and we are excited to have you to do this series with us. We pray that everyone here will enjoy this series. Make sure you share these videos also with any of your Muslim friends who are making announcements to you that way, that, hey, I'm leaving Islam, I'm leaving religion, I don't believe in God anymore, and so on and so forth. Until we meet again, have a blessed day. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. We can't make these quality videos without the help of partners like you. So please consider becoming a Patreon supporter today at patreon.com/Sira International. I want to make sure you always get notified when we release a new video. So please click the bell to be notified, and of course, make sure to subscribe to this channel. If this video was helpful to you, please click the thumbs up. Thank you.